Winnie was a striking white Siamese cat, her deep blue eyes a haunting contrast against her pale coat. Yet, despite her beauty, Winnie couldn't seem to find anyone willing to adopt her. She spent her days curled up in the corner of a cold, steel cage, watching as one by one, her fellow shelter cats found homes and loving families. Left alone, Winnie's hope dimmed, though she never gave up completely. Her story, like many, was one of abandonment, but what set Winnie apart was the turn her life took when fate brought a woman named Rhiannon to her door. Animal shelters can be heart-wrenching places. Each animal within the walls has a story, often one of sadness and loss, waiting for a happy ending. The animals that call these shelters home have often been abandoned, sometimes abused, and they wait patiently, dreaming of the day when a family will take them home and shower them with the love they desperately need. For Winnie, this dream was growing more distant as time went on. She was no longer a kitten, and many people coming into the shelter were seeking younger, more playful pets. As Winnie watched the shelter cats come and go, she couldn't help but feel that perhaps she would be left behind forever. Winnie's beginnings were tragic. She was the daughter of a feral cat who abandoned her shortly after birth. Left on her own, Winnie had been taken in by the shelter as a kitten and had spent her life there. While her friends came and went, Winnie remained, her steel cage a permanent fixture. She had seen the faces of potential adopters light up at the sight of other cats but dim when they looked at her. It wasn't that she wasn't beautiful. There was just something about her that didn't seem to capture their attention. The harsh reality was that animals that weren't adopted after a certain time faced a grim fate. Winnie had been in the shelter longer than most, and time was running out for her. Despite this, Winnie clung to hope. Whenever someone walked through the shelter's doors, she would immediately rise and start making soft, pleading noises, hoping to capture their attention. Sometimes people would stop by her cage, and for a moment, she would feel a spark of hope, but they always moved on. One day, something different happened. Rhiannon, a woman who had no intention of adopting a pet that day, was visiting the shelter out of curiosity. As she walked through the rows of empty cages, many of the animals had already been adopted. She suddenly heard a strange noise. It wasn't the usual meow or bark, but a soft, persistent cry that piqued her curiosity. Unable to ignore it, Rhiannon followed the sound until she found herself standing in front of Winnie's cage. What Rhiannon saw made her heart ache. Winnie was sitting in the farthest corner of her cage, her large blue eyes filled with a quiet desperation. The moment their eyes met, Rhiannon felt an immediate bond. There was something about the cat, something about the sadness in her eyes, that tugged at Rhiannon's heart. She hadn't been planning to adopt a pet, but at that moment, she knew she had to do something. It was as if fate had guided her to Winnie. Rhiannon approached the shelter staff and asked to spend some time with Winnie. As soon as they opened the cage, Winnie hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to trust this new human. But Rhiannon's gentle demeanor put her at ease, and within minutes, Winnie was purring softly as she nuzzled against Rhiannon's hand. The bond was undeniable, and Rhiannon realized that she couldn't leave without her. Without hesitation, Rhiannon told the shelter staff that she wanted to adopt Winnie. She quickly filled out the necessary paperwork, but as she left to complete the adoption process, something heartbreaking happened. Winnie began to cry. She thought Rhiannon was leaving her, just like everyone else had. The sound of Winnie's cries broke Rhiannon's heart, and she knew more than ever that she was making the right decision. After completing the adoption process, Rhiannon returned and scooped Winnie into her arms, promising her that she would never be alone again. The trip home was quiet, but Rhiannon could sense that Winnie was anxious about what lay ahead. She had been in the shelter for so long that the concept of a home was foreign to her. When they arrived at Rhiannon's house, Winnie's reaction was unexpected. Rather than exploring her new surroundings, the shy cat immediately climbed on top of a stack of books, cautiously watching everything from her perch. Rhiannon chuckled softly, finding Winnie's behavior endearing. It was clear that the cat needed time to adjust to her new home, But Rhiannon was patient, knowing that this was a huge change for the little cat. Over the next few days, Winnie slowly began to come out of her shell. She started to explore her new home, growing more comfortable with each passing day. Rhiannon watched with joy as the once timid and scared cat transformed into a happy and playful companion. It was clear that Winnie was finally home. Though abandoned by her mother, Winnie now had someone to care for her. Rhiannon became the adoptive mother that Winnie had longed for, and the bond between them grew stronger each day. Rhiannon was filled with joy every time she saw Winnie curled up in her favorite spot, content and safe. The cat, once filled with fear and loneliness, now thrived in the warmth of a loving home. Winnie's story was one of hope, but it wasn't the only one. There were many animals, like Winnie, who waited in shelters for someone to see past their sadness and give them a second chance. One such cat was Benben, a cat who had been overlooked time and time again. Benben was an unusual-looking cat. His face was marked with scars, the result of a terrible attack by a larger animal. The shelter staff believed that Benben had been attacked by a wild dog or some other predator. His ear was torn, his fur was patchy in places, and one of his eyes drooped slightly, giving him a perpetually sad expression. Despite his battle-worn appearance, Benben was a gentle soul. However, his looks made him an undesirable candidate for adoption. While other cats were quickly adopted, Benben remained at the shelter, his sad expression mirroring the sadness in his heart. Days turned into weeks, and Benben grew more depressed. He stopped eating, refusing even his favorite treats, and his health began to deteriorate. The shelter staff did their best to care for him, but they knew that Benben was giving up hope. Benben had all but resigned himself to a lonely life when, one day, a couple walked into the shelter. They weren't looking for the most beautiful cat or the youngest kitten. They were simply looking for a cat who needed a home. When they saw Benben sitting forlornly in his cage, they didn't see a scared and damaged animal. They saw a soul in need of love. Without hesitation, the couple asked to meet Benben. The shelter staff warned them of his history and the likelihood that he would need extra care due to his injuries and declining health. But the couple was undeterred. They spent time with Benben, and the bond was instantaneous. They knew he was the one. When they made the decision to adopt Benben, the shelter staff was overjoyed. For the first time in a long time, Benben's future looked bright. The couple took him home that same day, and something incredible happened. Within hours of being in his new home, Benben's entire demeanor changed. It was as though he understood that he was finally safe, finally loved. His sad expression softened, and he began to explore his new surroundings with curiosity. The couple watched in amazement as Benben transformed before their eyes. He began eating again, his appetite returning with a vengeance. He spent his days lounging in sunny spots, napping peacefully, making up for all the sleepless nights he had endured in the shelter. The couple's home became his sanctuary, and Benben flourished in their care. Both Winnie and Benben had been given a second chance, and their lives were forever changed by the kindness of the people who adopted them. They had gone from being abandoned and unwanted to being cherished members of loving families. Their stories were a testament to the power of love and the importance of giving shelter animals a chance, no matter their age or appearance. Rhiannon often thought back to the day she had found Winnie at the shelter. It was a decision that had changed her life as much as it had changed Winnie's. The joy and companionship that Winnie brought into her life were immeasurable, and she knew that adopting her had been the best decision she had ever made. The couple who adopted Benben felt the same way. They had seen beyond his scars and his sad eyes, and in return, they had gained a loyal and loving friend. Benben's transformation from a despondent shelter cat to a happy, content pet was nothing short of miraculous, and it served as a reminder that every animal deserves a chance at happiness. As the years passed, Winnie and Benben continued to thrive in their respective homes. They were no longer defined by their pasts or their time in the shelter. They were cherished family members, each with their own unique personalities and quirks. Winnie remained a bit shy, but her love for Rhiannon was unwavering. She spent her days curled up in Rhiannon's lap or perched on her favorite windowsill, watching the world go by. Benben, on the other hand, became the epitome of relaxation. He loved nothing more than stretching out on the couple's bed, basking in the warmth of the sun. His days of fear and hunger were long behind him, and he reveled in the simple pleasures of life: a soft bed, a full bowl of food, and the loving arms of his new family. Their stories, though different, shared the same message: love can change everything. For shelter animals like Winnie and Benben, a little bit of kindness and a second chance had made all the difference. They had gone from being forgotten and unwanted to being beloved companions, and their journeys were a testament to the resilience of animals and the power of love. As more people heard their stories, Rhiannon and the couple hoped that others would be inspired to adopt animals from shelters. There were so many Winnies and Benbens out there, waiting for someone to give them a chance. And for those who did, the reward was immeasurable: the love of a pet who had known hardship and could now bask in the joy of being loved. In the end, it wasn't just Winnie and Benben who were saved. Their new families were saved as well, for the love and companionship that animals bring into our lives is a gift like no other. And in that small shelter, now with 2 fewer occupants, the cycle continued. Other animals waited for their turn, dreaming of the day when someone would walk through the door and take them home.